Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain.
Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain. I'm Shannon Zeman, and thank you for joining us on the most important 15 minutes of your day, where we share expert information on safety and preparedness that you can use in your everyday life. There are many studies that have shown that teens who spend more time on screens are more likely to report mental health issues than those who spend less time or doing non-screen activities. Now, with COVID and our kids required to be on their devices even more, we must start taking screen time seriously. Joining me today is Clayton Cranford, a sergeant in a Southern California law enforcement agency and founder of Total Safety Solutions. He is one of the nation's leading law enforcement educators on social media, child safety, and behavioral threat assessment. He also is the author of Parenting in a Digital World and created Cyber Safety Cop, a comprehensive internet and social media safety program. So thank you for joining us again, Clayton, because last time we had an amazing talk about keeping your kids safe on the internet and online. And so today I'm excited to talk about the importance of using screen time limits and how, it can make our kids happier in the long run. They're not going to be happy at the beginning.
Right. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me back. Yeah, this is probably the number one struggle that parents are having on a daily basis. And I have a lot of parents reaching out to me, like, how do I do this? What's a safe limit? And now it's even like with COVID and kids having to be home all the time, it's changed because now this is how they're connecting with their friends, and their mental health and being able to socialize with their friends are tightly connected. So the conversations become a little more complicated because now it's not just about, hey, you're on screens too much. Now it's about finding a balance. And maybe the discussion should also maybe kind of shift towards not just the amount of time that they're spending, but what they're doing. So that's quality time on there. If they're interacting with friends, that's a little bit different than constantly checking their social media status to see how many likes that they have. So there is a difference. And I think if we just say, X amount of time, maybe we're missing the most important point of this. But clearly, the more time kids spend online, on social media specifically, the more likely they are to think about hurting themselves. And in a study that came out in 2017, I think it's one of the best studies, showed that kids who are on there 3+ hours a day are 34% more likely to think about hurting themselves and actually hurting themselves than children who are on there only 2 hours. And then that same study showed that when you go to 5+ hours, you're now 48% more likely than the 2 hour or less kids. And those are big, scary numbers for us to kind of digest. And the second leading cause of death for young people is suicide. So, what does this mean for us and our children? I think it essentially means we need to really take this issue seriously and try to come up with a plan to keep our kids' brains safe.
Yes. And this topic has always been a large topic in my household on, social media and screen time and everything like that. What do we do? Now both of my boys are still distance learning. They haven't gotten to go back at all. And so you're giving me statistics on kids that are, less than 2 hours or over 3 or over 5. Have they even started to encompass what we're doing with our children on the computers also? Because
the fact that they have to be on their computers all day for school, creates this environment where, kids multitask. They're not just doing one thing, right? They're on their computer, maybe they're listening to their teacher, and then they're over on their phone and they're checking Instagram. And so they're going back and forth. So you really don't have like a pure, this is just time for school. All these things are kind of blurred together. I mean, there are some things we can do. One is, first, get a sense of how much time, and for your children too, so they can understand how much time they're spending. So Apple, on their in the new operating system that came out like a year ago, they included screen time tracking, screen reports, and you can actually limit screen time through this. It's done through the parental control part of the settings, which, and if you don't know how to set that up, I have an article on my website that talks you through it. But what's really neat is once you set it up, every day it shows you how much time you're spending on screens, how much time are you spending on each individual app, and how often you're picking your phone up. And when you ask your kid, like, how much, like, do you think you're on screens a lot? And the kid's like, nah, I'm fine. But then they look at it and they're like, holy cow, I've been on like Twitter, or I've been on TikTok for 5 hours today. So all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, you're right. Maybe I am on here too much. And I think they did a recent survey of teens, and more than a third of the teens surveyed said they're concerned about the amount of time that they're spending on screens, and also concerned about their mental health. So nearly more, or a little more than a third. So it's not, kids are thinking about these things. But when you show them like the real numbers, all of a sudden they're like, wow, maybe I need to go on like a digital diet. And that's, maybe one way of looking at it. It's like, it's not all bad, right? Just like, so, maybe a little bit of sweets here and there are okay to have in our diet, because to go zero is difficult, and often it can make them miserable as well. So, so understand like how much time is your kid really spending there, and that screen time app built into the operating system of the settings of iPhone and your iPad will help you do that. So that's maybe step number one.
That's really great. And I like it because even though we would all like to eat ice cream breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you can't do it. And so that puts it in a great, easy to understand, analogy that we could even use with younger kids too.
Yeah, make your kid part of the solution. So I always felt like the best way to get compliance, and I learned this in law enforcement as well, is give people options and help them kind of come up with the solution themselves. And if you ask enough questions and you kind of frame it in a way, you kind of lead them towards like, one or two options that would work out well, and let them choose. And you might be surprised how, kind of conscientious your child will be when you start talking about these things with them, and you make them feel like, hey, you're getting older. This is a great responsibility that you have, or a great opportunity to be on the internet, et cetera. Let's come up with some ideas that might make it healthy for us, and you can use it, et cetera. So that's one idea. The other one is probably the number one question I get from parents is, when should I get my kid a phone? In this kind of idea. And my advice is wait as long as you possibly can. And that includes even an iPad. The American Academy of Pediatrics says if you're under 18 months of age, zero screen time, zero. 18 to 24 months, limited. Like maybe you watch Sesame Street with your kid, right? And then 2 to 5 years, they say less than 1 hour per day of quote unquote, high quality programming. I'm not sure what that means, but I think the idea here is that we should be putting off screens as long as we possibly can for our kids. And I don't know about you, but like when my kids are older, so I don't walk them to school anymore. They drive to school. But when I'm out on a jog in the morning and I see families going to school, I see toddlers in strollers with iPads. And I just feel like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. Because here's an opportunity. Your child's outside and they should be looking at the world, and now they're laser focused on this iPad. And studies are showing that this is changing their brains. So the National Institutes of Health is doing what they call longitudinal studies. So they're taking 10,000 kids and they're scanning their brains year after year after year after year, physical MRI type scans of their brains.
Right.
And they found already, so preliminarily, they found that kids who are on screens 7 hours or more a day, and starting at young ages, their brains, the structures of their brains look different than kids who aren't on screens. In fact, they find like there's this thing called the cortex, the front part of your brain, which is like a really important part of your brain. It's part of your decision making, the executive decision making part of your brain, and they find that is thinning. The layer of that cortex is thinning, and that's something that doesn't normally happen until like in your 20s. So that's concerning. So we need to start taking this seriously, especially the earlier we start with kids on screens. I think, the bigger impact it's going to have with them.
Right. And that's one of the things that I feel like our family has become very aware of, because if we're on our devices, whether we're in the car, and the kids are watching a movie or doing something on the phone, or even like you're saying, out having a walk and your child's in the stroller, you're losing so many opportunities for different kinds of conversations. Like phones aren't allowed at our dinner table, except for when my husband's on call, but he's not messing with it. Right. But because of the fact that it's just so easy to get sucked in. And like you're saying, with showing your child how much time they spend on the phone, I think us as any human being should look at how long we are spending on our phones. I think we would all be shocked.
And this isn't just a kid problem. This is a you, me, everybody problem.
Yeah.
And I love that you brought up your dinner table, because what an amazing opportunity that we have, because our children get hungry and they have to stop to eat. So, right, this is our opportunity to pounce on them and say, what's going on? And even kind of highlight this. They did a study back in 2014. It was published in the Pediatric Journal of American Medical Association. They said that families that have family dinner, so no screens, no distraction, it's just chewing food, eye contact, and conversation. And they said that families that did that, those children had less anxiety, depression, self-harm, suicidal thoughts, alcohol, drug use, fighting, and vandalism. So just right. So just merely slowing down and putting away the screens and having that kind of undisturbed, undistracted time. And these parents aren't like psychologists. They're just having real conversations with their kids. You don't have to be an expert. You make a difference. And what's really cool about that study is that they found that the more often you do it, you get even better results. So families that had like 3 family dinners per week, those kids had fewer mental health issues than kids who had fewer family dinners. And the researchers said it doesn't necessarily have to happen at the dinner table. It's just that's a good time, because it's kind of scheduled in the day. But if you're driving your kid to soccer practice or whatever, and they're sitting in the back, and say, hey, take the ear pods out, put the phone down, turn off SpongeBob for a moment, and let's just chat, right, about things that are important. So there's opportunities throughout the day.
Take advantage of it.
Yes. Yeah. The average teen, this is before COVID. The numbers are going to be through the roof as soon as we start seeing those studies coming in. But before COVID, the average teen consumes 6 to 8 hours of media on their screens a day. So they're consuming a lot of information, and a lot of that information is not healthy stuff, right? Pornography, self-harm, fighting, drug use, like all the things that they're seeing. And there's no way to filter that out of Instagram. Right. How much time, do we spend with our kids and sharing our values with them? Mm-hmm. It's not even close. Yeah. So whatever time we can, we need to, make that a real opportunity to do that.
I think that's an amazing challenge to put out there to everyone. I hope you will come back and join us again. I will have the links for Clayton's book, Parenting in a Digital World, and also his website, Cybersecurity Cop. And if you have any questions, please email me them, and we can get Clayton back on here and have these great discussions. So thank you again.
Anytime. Thank you, Shannon.
Next week, Officer Bill Hume will be discussing how alcohol affects your body and decision-making, and how that relates to the dangers of driving while impaired. So thank you for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. You've just been listening to the most important 15 minutes of your day with me, Shannon Zeman. Remember, with knowledge, you have the power.
Thank you for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. You can listen to this program all over again by going over to https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. You can also hear it on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon Alexa, AMFM247.com every Tuesday evening between 8 and 9 p.m. YouTube, Facebook, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, and all the other podcast directories one can find on the internet.